lest we forget. Hillbilly Blue Balls, the redneck retard, a.k.a. the photosynthetic redneck, a.k.a. no marble science, fresh off his thesis defense of...
Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas.
March 2021.
Can I ask Jeremy a question?
No,
What kind of
fuck off.
science is astronomy, Jeremy? Don't tell me to fuck off. Just answer the question. What kind of science is astronomy?
Pseudoscience.
Correct.
No, it's called observational science.
Observational science? Isn't that painfully redundant? Since the first step of the scientific method is observe a natural phenomenon, leading to a logical fallacy, fallacy of composition, also known as faulty induction. Description: inferring that something is true of the whole from the fact that it is true of some part of the whole. With observational science, observation is part of the whole, but not the whole of science, i.e., the scientific method. You still have hypothesis construction and the actualization thereof. Experiment. Let's have a little look-see here. Observational science. There's only one source I can find. That's troubling. It's from yourdictionary.com. Okay? It says the definition of observational science is a field of science where controlled observations cannot be done in order to study causes and effects. Scientific studies are simply done through the observation of nature taking its course and recording the findings over time. It gives examples of observational science: astronomy, sociology, economics, and epidemiology. Beneath the huge advertisement, it also has paleontology and geology. Let's take a look at the first part of this definition. Observational science is a field of science where controlled observations... What do they mean by that? Controlled observations, like you got blinders on, or you got electrodes on your eyelids, and you plug it in, and they open up your eyelids, and they're controlled, and then you pull the plug, and they turn them off? What the hell is that? Who knows? Controlled observations can't be done in order to study causes and effects. Well, that's not natural science. Hypotheses and experiments are purely cause and effect relationship moieties. So it's pseudoscience. If these guys go masquerading around as science, then they're pseudosciences by definition. The second part of this definition: scientific studies are simply done through the observation of nature taking its course and recording the findings over time. What? And they put astronomy with sociology and economics, social sciences? Nature taking its course in sociology? Could you show me that? How about nature taking its course in economics? My word, son.
Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas. It's like epidemiology, sociology, economics, things like that are called observational sciences.
Yep, that's right. You forgot to scroll down underneath your dictionary source and catch a hold of paleontology and geology train wrecks in your observational science dumpster fire.
Do you know what that means, Jeremy?
It means it's pseudoscience because you're not going to follow the scientific method.
Correct.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
It means...
Yeah, laugh it up there, funny boy.
It means it's a field of science where controlled observations can't be done in order to study causes and effects.
Yeah, exactly. The prosecution rests. The scientific method's sole purpose is to elucidate cause and effect relationships. You just admitted that these clowns can't do cause and effect. Ergo pseudoscience, by definition. Thanks. It's also fallacious, as we identified.
That's what observational science is.
Yeah, pseudoscience. We already established that. Also, Professor Blueballs, does your dictionary, Observational Sciences, only conduct observational studies? The answer is yes. From Hinkelmann, Klaus, Kepthorne, Design and Analysis of Experiments, Volume 1, Introduction to Experimental Design. Observational studies are not experiments.
Oh, son of a... That's gonna leave a mark.
By definition, observational studies lack the manipulation required for Baconian experiments.
Fatality.
In addition, observational studies, for example in biological or social systems, often involve variables that are difficult to quantify or control. Moreover, there are 3 types of observational studies: case control, cross-sectional, and cohort studies. Let me ask you a question. Can you give me the case control, cross-sectional, or cohort study in astronomy? It'd be easier building a perpetual motion machine of the second kind out of taxation without representation.
Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas. There is no such thing as the scientific method, Jeremy. I'm sorry.
You serious?
Jeez, hillbilly. You lost your photosynthetic redneck mind? That's rhetorical. We'll just do 10 out of 185 million. We want to get out of here this century. From the Geosociety, Kristen McClellan, the title of the article, The Nature of Science and the Scientific Method. From the University of Rochester Physics Labs, Professor Wolf's title of the article, Introduction to the Scientific Method. From Anne-Marie Helmenstein, PhD, Biomedical Sciences, title of the article, 6 Steps of the Scientific Method. From the Khan Academy, title of the article, The Scientific Method. From Live Science, title of the article, Science and the Scientific Method. From ChemLibreText, title of the article, 1.4, The Scientific Method, How Chemists Think. From Northern Arizona University, title of the article, Defining the Scientific Method. From Purdue University, title of the article, The Scientific Method. From the National Institutes of Health.gov, title of the paper, The Scientific Method. From Nature.com, title of the article, Defining the Scientific Method. If you would have said there is no such thing as the Declaration of Independence, it'd have been more coherent.
Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas.
It's creating low pressure.
And that's how, listen to me, that's how it overcomes gravity.
Jesus.
It doesn't overcome gravity.
So, let me get this straight. That's how it overcomes gravity. It doesn't overcome gravity? Do you reminisce with strangers? You got horseshit for brains, son. Clown.
Let's agree on a height, because I think that's a fair point to proceed forward from. You've obviously got a point of objection to 10 feet, and maybe it was a little flippant. My apologies.
Well, I don't mind.
Maybe you could suggest
it doesn't really
the height.
matter.
So it doesn't really matter. You're saying that height doesn't really matter, hillbilly blue balls, the redneck retard.
Well, it does matter, doesn't it? Because the distance to the horizon is what?
No,
it does matter. Why? Why doesn't it matter?
Don't attack me. I'm just.
Don't attack you. He's merely asking you why height doesn't matter. You friggin' snowflake bozo redneck retard.
No, why doesn't it matter?
Making a point.
Your point was that it doesn't matter. My point is that it does.
Listen, if you want to target height,
why does it matter?
If you want an observer height or a gun barrel height of 30 feet, you could probably target stuff out to about 6 miles, something like that.
Sir, why doesn't the observer height matter when targeting?
It doesn't matter because the use radar, which is like
no interruption, Tears.
50 or 60 feet up, you know what I mean?
Tears,
and it's
we
a
got
parabola flying over
Adam
the
and Blue
horizon.
having a combo here. Adam and Blue, please.
You could see a target on the horizon at about 6 or 7 miles from 30 feet, from a 30-foot observer height or gun barrel height, laser height.
Why does not the observer height not matter when you're painting a target, when you're observing it across a geometric ball of radius?
I didn't say it didn't matter.
Oh, really? So you didn't say it didn't matter? Do you even know your own name? Or where you're at? You double-speaking Muppets. You just said it didn't matter about 20 seconds ago. Let's have a listen.
It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
You said clearly it doesn't really matter.
Did I?
You did, sir. That's why I felt the need to address it so we could proceed.
I don't believe I said that.
So you don't believe you said that? Really? Well, let's have another listen.
It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
Oh, it does matter, the observer height.
Of course it matters.
It
doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
Oh, it does matter, the observer height.
Of course it matters.
Wow. It's well past time for you to head back to the Blue Tick Coonhound Kennel, or your true vocation, picking up cans alongside of the road. Supervised!
Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas.
You said you're doing an experiment. I just want to know what experiment it is. Would you have more detail?
You don't know that I'm doing Cavendish.
What? Cavendish never performed a scientific experiment, Professor Hillbilly. He didn't have a viable dependent variable. Ergo, no hypothesis. Therefore, no experiment. Check the original paper. You'll find nada. Zippo. Number 2. Why are you performing a non-experiment from a 106-year-out-date pseudoscience, Hillbilly? From Douglas Klein, Professor of Physics, via Phys Libre text. Newton's 2 crowning achievements, the laws of motion and the laws of gravitation, that had reigned supreme since published in the Principia in 1687, were toppled from the throne by Einstein. So, it's well past time to get up to date with a new hotness, Einstein's general theory of relativity from 1915, and start performing bendy space-time experiments.
And what's your hypothesis?
Attracts mass.
Sorry? What's your hypothesis?
Mass attracts other mass.
So, your hypothesis is, given mass, then mass will attract other mass, right? That's not a scientific hypothesis, Professor Blueballs. That's a circular banjo-do-si-do begging the question fallacy train wreck. You'd fail 5th grade general science and the 60-level basic reasoning course. By the way, what's mass?
Mass is simply the resistance to acceleration. Do you know that?
No. That's inertia. But we'll roll with it anyway. So let's take the definition you provided and substitute the definition for the word, mass. You said mass is the resistance to acceleration. So your hypothesis actually is, Given the resistance to acceleration will attract the resistance to acceleration.
Gas molecules are moving in all different directions, but they're also moving in one singular mass in one direction.
So gas molecules are moving in all different directions and at the same time moving in one singular resistance to acceleration direction?
Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas. And Newton's second law of motion is just the one everybody's heard a million times. Force is equal to mass times acceleration. Do you have any problem with that?
Yeah.
Look at you, big dummy.
Mainly, it, along with all of Newton's so-called laws, along with the universal law of gravitation, were replaced by Einstein 106 years ago. Then wholesale debunked by quantum mechanics shortly thereafter. From Douglas Klein, professor of physics, Phys Libre text, Newton's two crowning achievements, the laws of motion and the laws of gravitation, that had reigned supreme since published in the Principia in 1687, were toppled from the throne by Einstein. From Professor Jacob D. Bekenstein, caltech.edu, Einstein also replaced the Newtonian law of motion by the statement that free test particles move along geodesics, the shortest curves in the space-time geometry. Adding insult to your ignoramus ignorance, Daddy F equal MA was filleted and fricasseed vis-a-vis quantum mechanics circa 1925. Hey, Dick! Can you educate this wiki-parroting pretender clown ball-tard bozo for us? From Richard Feynman, the Feynman Lectures, caltech.edu. Even though the law F equal MA is false,
Hosmer with a drive. Cheese and crackers.
And all the derivations of Newton were wrong for the conservation of momentum, yada, yada, yada.
Fatality.
Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas. A mole is simply a quantity. And as I say, it could be a quantity of anything. We could have a mole of brines if we had enough space to put that many brines.
Wrong. From Royal Society of Chemistry, mole contains exactly 6.022140076 times 10 to the 23rd elementary entities. Unless Brian is an elementary entity, you just bashed yourself in the face with a spade shovel. Again.
You dumbass.
Yes, in atmosphere, depending on the ratio of surface area to mass, or to weight, if you want to think of it that way.
Wrong. You're going to have to pick one, Professor. Even in your fairy tale paradigm, mass and weight are two different animals. From your alma mater wiki. In common usage, the mass of an object is often referred to as its weight, though these are in fact different concepts and quantities. In scientific context, mass is the amount of matter in an object, though matter may be difficult to define, whereas weight is the force exerted on an object by gravity. Why aren't you mindlessly parroting the correct horseshit from your pseudoscientist, Professor Hillbelly?
Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas.
And the force you're speaking about is gravity, is it not?
Yes.
Why is it then that Albert Einstein, over 100 years ago, stopped calling gravity a force, and he called it an effect due to the curvature of space-time by matter.
Well, it is. That's exactly what it is. It is the curvature of space-time. But Einstein did nothing more than add to Newton's theories.
You serious?
Yeah, because he's Dunning batshit Kruger. Number one, Newton never even proposed a scientific theory in his life. Number two, if Einstein added to Newton's theories, he would have subtracted special relativity. Why? Well, the universal law of gravitation violates special relativity. From Britannica.com. Because Isaac Newton's law of gravity served so well in explaining the behavior of the solar system, the question arises why it was necessary to develop a new theory of gravity. The answer is that Newton's theory violates special relativity, for it requires an unspecified action at a distance, through which any two objects, such as the sun and the earth, instantaneously pull each other, no matter how far apart. However, instantaneous response would require the gravitational interaction to propagate at an infinite speed, which is precluded by special relativity. From Professor John D. Norton, Department of History and Philosophy of Science, University of Pittsburgh. Newton's celebrated theory of gravitation presumed instantaneous action at a distance. The sun now exerts a gravitational force on the Earth, now with a magnitude set by Newton's inverse square law. The key part was the now. If the sun were to move slightly, the resulting alteration in the force it exerts on the Earth would be felt by us instantaneously, according to Newtonian theory. That means that Newton's theory depends upon the notion of absolute simultaneity. A change there is felt here at the same moment. However, Einstein's 1905 theory had banished absolute simultaneity from physics.
Oh, son of a... That's gonna leave a mark.
Because every molecule of gas is being subjected to an acceleration of 9.8 meters per second toward the Earth.
Yeah. I'd say there's a better chance of Liberace being resurrected sporting a purple tutu and jumping on a chartreuse-hobbled unicorn and riding around the Sombrero Galaxy. If what you just said was true, it would never rain. You dumbass cracker. And how's it feel to be in direct contradiction with Boyle's law, Charles' law, Gay-Lussac's law, Avogadro's law, and parts of Dalton's law? And not to be ever outdone, the King Topper booger-eating bull in a china shop exhibition, leaving no dish uncracked, you've taken the second law of thermodynamics, along with Brownian motion, out back to the woodshed and bludgeoned each to a bloody lifeless pulp.
Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas.
Do we measure the rate that things fall? Is that how we determine the gravitational constant?
No, that's not how the gravitational constant was arrived at. That's not how you can derive or measure the gravitational constant. You can't derive it in the first place. It had to be measured. Still has to be measured. How
is it measured though?
It's a product of our inconvenient set of units that we choose to use. If we'd picked something other than meters and kilograms and so forth, could have come up with a completely different constant, but it's a constant of proportionality. How is it measured? That's what Cavendish did.
Wrong. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Professor Blue Balls here is either a stone-cold liar or clinical level Dunning batshit Kruger. From Professor Lauren Hodges, Department of Physics and Astronomy, iowastate.edu, Cavendish didn't calculate a numerical value for big G or M. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the poster child of a fork-tongued, double-speaking, numpty dipshit spinning space monkey.
Cavendish measured, actually what Cavendish was doing was not coming up with a gravitational constant.
What in the flying is going on here? You just said...
How is it measured? That's what Cavendish did. Cavendish measured, actually what Cavendish was doing was not coming up with a gravitational constant. How is it measured? That's what Cavendish did. How is it measured? That's what Cavendish did. Actually what Cavendish was doing was not coming up with a gravitational constant.
Say hello to my little friend!
Cavendish came up with the mass of the weight of the Earth. He was looking to determine what the mass, the weight of the Earth, is.
Remember this, ass clown. From Professor Lauren Hodges, Department of Physics and Astronomy, iowastate.edu, Cavendish didn't calculate a numerical value for big G or M or M or M. How about this one, dumbass? Even in your fairy tale paradigm, mass and weight are two different animals. From your alma mater wiki. In common usage, the mass of an object is often referred to as its weight, though these are in fact different concepts and quantities. In scientific context, mass is the amount of matter in an object, though matter may be difficult to define, whereas weight is the force exerted on an object by gravity. And finally, now let's not forget what this window licker said.
Cavendish came up with the mass of the weight of the Earth.
Fatality.
From Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society of London, Volume 88, 1798, pages 469 to 526. Title of the paper, Experiments to Determine the Density of the Earth by Henry Cavendish, Esquire, FRS, and AS. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's obvious that this slack-jawed meatball has never even looked at the original paper.
Ay, caramba!
Yet,
you knew that the butane was denser, was a more dense gas than the air that was already inside of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Brian, and I forgot what I was going to say at this point. Yeah, the butane is heavier. No question about that. It's heavier not because of relative density. It's heavier because of relative density. No, well, it's heavier because it's more dense. It's heavier not because of relative density. It's heavier because it's more dense. Then find a citation that says a container is required to have gas pressure. You cannot find it. Well, gas pressure requires a container if you're talking about pressurized gas.
Prepare yourself.
It has nothing to do with the Earth rotating under the football. The ball is simply conserving the angular momentum it had when it left the surface of the Earth.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this ass clown retard of the ages is clinical level Dunning batshit Kruger insane. From Vanderbilt.edu, Angular momentum is the measure of the momentum of an object around an axis. From Phys Libre text, the law of conservation of angular momentum. When no external torques act on a rotating object, its angular momentum is conserved. What's its? Well, the rotating object. Angular momentum deals with angular velocity. That is, it speaks to radians or revolutions per unit time around a given axis. There's two types of angular momentum, spin and orbital. Then two more subtypes, point and extended objects. Point objects is just how it sounds, an object accelerating around a point, like a ball attached to a string that you start spinning above your head. The formula is L, angular momentum, equals R, radians. That's the distance from the rotation point in your hand to the center of the ball, times P, linear momentum. And extended objects is the whole object rotating about its own axis, like a spinning orb. The formula is L, angular momentum, equals rotational inertia times omega, which is angular velocity. That is radians per unit time. Professor Blue Balls is essentially saying that balls, balloons, helicopters, drones, and airplanes rotate after leaving the surface of the Earth.
You dumbass.
Look, Ma, the balloon's rotating about its center axis. Or, look, Ma, the hovering helicopter is orbiting the Earth. You dumbass cracker. Listening to this retard photosynthetic redneck is tantamount to listening to Mr. Magoo giving the keynote address at a metabolic pathway convention. Moreover, check this out. This booger eater's argument is that there's only one reference frame on the Earth.
It is one non-inertial reference frame. That's where Coriolis takes place, not two reference frames.
But then he says this.
The ball is simply conserving the angular momentum it had when it left the surface of the Earth.
If there's only one reference frame on the Earth, booger eater, then why in a flying Fukuyama would the object need to conserve any momentum whatsoever upon leaving the surface? It hasn't entered another reference frame. According to your dumbass, there's only one.
Oh, son of a... That's gonna leave a mark.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let's take a closer look at this again. From Phys Libre text, the law of conservation of angular momentum. When no external torques act on a rotating object, its angular momentum is conserved. The law of conservation of angular momentum would never need to be described without an inertial reference frame, because there'd never be a case where external torques would even exist. The concept of momentum conservation comes from and is a direct consequence of Newton's third law. From Boston University, Department of Physics. A good question to ask is, do Newton's laws apply all the time? In most cases they do, but if we're trying to analyze motion in an accelerated reference frame, while we're spinning around would be a good example, then Newton's laws are not valid.
Oh, now I've done it. I've cut the dickens out of my finger. Well,
a reference frame in which Newton's laws are valid is known as an inertial reference frame.
Oh, yeah.
So that then begs the question, Professor Blue Balls. How can we even describe the conservation of angular momentum without an inertial reference frame?
It is one non-inertial reference frame.
A reference frame in which Newton's laws are valid is known as an inertial reference frame?
It is one non-inertial reference frame.
You, sir, are what we call in the industry a dizzy dumb fuck. Psst. You will never, ever recover. Spin in space, monkeys. Spin in space, monkeys.
You know who this is?
No.
Bye-bye, lard ass.